If you can't skate, you're not going to be able to play at the next level because everybody can fly. Skating is one. Skill level, yeah, you got to have skill. If you're a big kid, play like a big kid. If you're a small kid, play like a big kid. Okay, you've got to show no fear because you're playing against big guys. There's only one puck. Everybody wants the puck. Okay, what are they going to do to get that puck? So you got to be able to be really, really quick and have some skill.
That was Marty Stein, Western Amateur Scout for the Buffalo Sabres, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolak. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolak, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolak, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolak. This is episode 97. 3 away from the century mark. How exciting. This is the first podcast to be released in 2023. So if you're listening out there, Happy New Year from Jason Podolak. I hope things have started off on the right foot. You have big goals. You have big plans for 2023. I know this is the time of resolutions. I don't really like resolutions per se. I'm more in the goal setting standpoint. I like to try to set up the year. You know, I like to try and put myself in a position of what do I want to get done this year? What do I want to accomplish? Where do I want my intentions to lie? Which is something that I also do with my clients and with the players that I work with. Is what does this year look like? What does 2023 look like for you? What do you want to do? Where do you want to grow? What do you want to develop? What do you want to accomplish? Often we don't actually ask those questions to ourselves, and especially as hockey players. You know, we might have this idea of the team we want to play on next year, but what is the plan to make that happen? What are you doing today or tomorrow or next week to make that happen in the fall? How are you going to get stronger, quicker, faster? How are you going to increase your skill set? How are you going to increase your mindset? How are you going to have the personal development required to be that player that you want to be? And without a plan and without some intention, it just doesn't work. So hopefully you're somebody out there that's listening, that you have an intention, you have a plan, you are putting together the pieces of your puzzle to make it work for you. I think regardless of age, I know there's a lot of hockey parents that listen to this as well. Please don't stop growing. That's when you start dying for real. Like, you got to continue to grow and develop and acquire new skills and make life fun. Be creative with it. Maybe that's not in your career. Maybe that's just a hobby, or maybe that's in your parenting or your relationship. Who knows what that is? But always try and shine a light somewhere where you can grow and expand and be of service. I mean, I think that's a really fun way to think about life and to think about how to be a contributor. So with the guest today in 2023, we are speaking with Marty Stein. Marty Stein has been a coach. My goodness, what does his bio say here? I think it's like he started with the Red Wings in 1996. So goodness gracious, 1996 to 2021, he was with the Red Wings as first of all as a part-time scout, then as a Western Amateur Scout, and then he got on with when the Steve Yzerman regime came in Detroit. He ended up moving to the Buffalo Sabres under Kevin Adams, and he's been in there since 2021 till present. So with the Red Wings, he won 4 Stanley Cups with them, which is fantastic. And he tells a story about when they won the first one there and what an experience that was in the interview. And he's also won 2 Calder Cups, and now he's trying to obviously reposition the Buffalo Sabres, which are definitely trending upwards, to get back in the playoffs and to get a cup of their own. So he's been in the game for a long time. 1996, that was actually the year, ironically, that I won World Junior Gold with Team Canada, beating Sweden in the final. that seems like a long time ago for me, and that was the first time he laced up his boots to be a scout. So he's been doing this for a long time since then. And anyone that's been around the game that long, has been looking at junior players for that long, obviously has a lot to offer. And Marty definitely supplies that here today on our conversation. If you are a player, you always want to know how to be a difference maker, how to stand out, how to impact a game. And sometimes it's a lot easier than we think. And that's totally what happens here in this interview. Marty talks about, just a willingness to compete, right? That yes, you have to skate in today's game. And yeah, I mean, you're going to hear about that in the interview. And if you feel that skating isn't quite where it needs to be at, like, you need to be working on your skating. That doesn't mean on the ice either. Young men and young women listening to this, like, that means off the ice. The good old fashioned slide board is an amazing tool. Body weight type exercises are an amazing tool. Deep lunges, deep squats, higher repetitions. Obviously loading is also a good thing, but building the leg strength, the trunk strength, the core strength, the butt strength to allow yourself to be powerful and explosive and to hold the proper skating position. Those are huge things. Yes, it's tough to work on edge work per se off the ice, but if you want to work on strength and power and your positional strength as a skater, you can do this away from the rink. So yeah, we talk about that. Definitely something you hockey players should be focusing on, and Marty shines a light on some other things that he thinks are important. And anyways, it's a great conversation. I've been meaning to. Marty is from Vernon, British Columbia. We cover that here, and I see him in the local rinks. I mean, he's been around the hockey schools here that I was a part of growing up. He's just been a part of the community and has been given back to hockey for as long as I can remember, and just one of the good guys of the game. And I was really happy that he agreed to come on and share some of his wisdom with us here today. So without further ado, I bring you 4-time Stanley Cup champion and 2-time Calder Cup champion, a scout since 1996 at the amateur level, scouting the best players in the Western region for the NHL entry draft, Mr. Marty Stein. Marty Stein, Western amateur scout for the Buffalo Sabres. Thanks so much for being here today.
Great to have me. Thank you.
Awesome. So we go, just for the viewers, and maybe I'll cover that in the intro too, but Marty is from Vernon, BC, or I don't know if you're from Vernon, Marty. I actually don't even know that, but you are from Vernon?
Born and raised, yeah.
Okay, cool. So 2 Vernonites, that's fantastic. So I've definitely known Marty because he's been in hockey for a long time, growing up and in different capacities. Now you're with the Sabres and been in hockey obviously a lot longer before that. I believe you were with Detroit for a long time in the same capacity. Is that correct?
I was 25 years with the Red Wings. I started in 96, and then up to a couple of years ago, this is my second year now with the Sabres.
Second year with the Sabres.
Yeah.
Cool. So how was that transition going from an organization that you must have felt like you almost started to going over to Buffalo?
Well, you know what? Both organizations are first class. They're both wonderful. Detroit treated me just incredible. And they've always said, too, that, it's not what you know, sometimes it's who you know. And I was fortunate to know Ken Holland. We grew up together. We played minor hockey together. We played junior hockey together. And then when he went to the Western League, I played at university. And we kind of came back. And when he became the assistant GM and then the GM, they needed somebody out this way. And we both agreed that, hey, you'll be a part-time guy. Started in 96. Won 2 Stanley Cups first 2 years, and I thought, geez, what a great ride so far. But very fortunate, 4 Stanley Cups with the Red Wings, and those are the highs. And then of course we've kind of bottomed out, or they bottomed out. And then a couple of years ago, or 3-4 years ago, Steve Eisman comes in, and he wants his own group, and he was really good to me. Steve was just great to me. And told us that, you guys are perfectly welcome to go out and start looking for another job somewhere, and we'll give you recommendations. And my wife is a little sour. She says, well, if he's giving recommendations, why don't you just keep it? But that's that. And Buffalo was one of the teams that I didn't contact, and they reached out to me. So I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate. And they have been just first class. They're a wonderful group of players, of course, but the management team and Jerry Fortin is our director of amateur scouting, and the whole staff has been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And maybe we can unpack that a little bit because, I obviously you know that I know Ken Holland as well, and then I also know the current GM, Kevin Adams, who I played with for a couple of years in St. John's. He's actually been a guest on the podcast, so I know him on a personal level as well. I don't know Steve Yzerman, but throughout that transition, now working for 3 different GMs sounds like your experience has been great with all of them. How was it going, moving from somebody that you knew as, I guess an acquaintance, a friend, right, and Ken Holland, to somebody that you didn't know, but obviously you respected and understood who he was in the industry, and Steve Yzerman? How did that change in that little interim time?
Well, a lot of people, like I said before, it's who you know, and like I was with the Wings, like I said, for 25 years, and I was with Ken for 22, 23 of those. He kept me on. He kept me on because, one, I did the work. A lot of people think, well, you're only there because you know somebody. He says, no, I did the frickin' work. So, and then when Steve came on board, you got to start proving yourself again. You got to make sure it's all right. Now, Steve, on the other hand, he had a different vision. He wanted his own people, and he's changed his staff. Now, when I'm on board with the Sabres, and Kevin Adams is the same thing. Kevin is a great guy. He's not outgoing. He is very receptive to all ideas, but he also has a vision of where he wants his staff to go. And the Sabres have rebuilt their whole scouting staff and administration as well. So again, I'm proving myself to another GM, and I think so far so good. We really mesh well. I'm the second oldest guy on the staff, and that so. I feel like the Yoda of our staff, but it's all good.
Yeah, I find that interesting because it's there's a massive parallel between what you're talking about in your profession and even from the player side. Because I remember when, oh my gosh, drawing a blank now, Mr. Fletcher got fired in Toronto, right? Who was the guy who traded for me, and Mike Smith came in, and GMs do want to put their own fingerprints on a team. Similar to probably what Kevin Adams did or Steve Yzerman, right? So that comes from the scouting staff, but it also comes from the players. Like at the time as a player, I didn't really recognize it per se, more so now looking back, but I just wasn't in Mr. Smith's plans, for whatever reason, right? I think, he just wanted his own guys in there, and that was the way it was. So it's, that might be an interesting thing as a pro scout. I know you're an amateur scout, but when GMs now come in, to see who is in their system that maybe might become available or maybe not of interest anymore. I know that's a big piece of the puzzle, is finding sort of unutilized assets other places. Do you think that there's maybe a game to that?
I believe so, but just like I said, the GM, again, with Buffalo, they had Jason Botterill, when he got let go, it was a clean sweep. The owner and new GM, they just said, enough's enough. We are going to rebuild again. And so all the guys that have come on board now, they're all new people within the last 2-3 years. So again, they've got a vision, and the vision itself is kind of sped up. Okay. And that includes, for example, in Detroit, we had 4 pro scouts. In Buffalo, we have 1 pro scout. Okay. In Detroit, we have 2 directors of player development. In Buffalo, we have 4 guys. Adam Mayer covers those guys, right? And they're more or less like pro scouts. Well, they go look at our prospects, and they look at the prospects that we could be looking at, but they're also looking at the pros. And both ways have got their virtues. Both ways have got their pros and cons, but I think it's more pro, because you want to develop a system, not just just from the NHL, but you want to have a great feeder line, and our feeder line is in Rochester. And when we were in Detroit, it was Grand Rapids, and those guys are there for a reason. And as well as I do, you played in the NHL, you played in the American League. With those top end guys in the AHL, there's not much difference from the guy playing in the NHL. It all depends on what organization you're with. And so these guys, the pro scout, He's trying to figure out, okay, who's going to best mesh into our system, into our organization. And that goes with the amateurs too, but we're looking at 4 or 5 years down the road.
Right. The one thing I always wonder with the scouts, and you've said it now twice, I think, that it's not always what you know, but who you know, and of course networking is a big deal in any industry, and hockey's no exception. But when it comes to that, like being a scout and let's say getting hired or being interviewed, the resume, like the length of your resume, as far as tenure, I'm sure matters, but there's no stats, at least that I'm unaware of. It's not like a hockey player. It's like, oh, you knew he was in the AHL and he had 40 here and he scored 30 here. Like, what do you come to the table with as a scout? Like, do you tell other teams like who you saw? Is there like some star picks that you can say, or how do you put your best foot forward and let them know that you're good at your job?
You mean as a scout?
Yeah, as a scout, right? When you're getting interviewed, because that's more behind the scenes stuff, right? It's not like a coach who has wins and losses, and you know what I mean. So I wonder how that aspect of it works.
Well, to me, like as you know, I was a teacher for 32 years. I got hired in my hometown. I applied for a job. I got a job. I retired, in 2013 because, and I retired a year early because I had another job. I was scout with the Red Wings. So it was easy process for me. I didn't have to go out and do a resume and that type of thing. And then all of a sudden when I did not re-sign with Detroit, now I've got to send out a resume. He said, well, what's on your Jerry Fortin? Like he said, look, Marty, we still want a resume. So I haven't done a resume since I was 21 or something like that, right now. Right. Holy geez, what I got put in. So I put in a resume, a scout, blah, 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 won 4 Stanley Cups, won 2 Calder Cups, and it's not like the old days where, I found this player. We have players that were in my area, like Darren Helm, for example, okay? Darren Helm played in the Western Hockey League. He's played in Medicine Hat. He was in my area. I wrote reports on him. Detroit drafted him. Okay, it's not like, well, that's Marty Stein's guy. No, that's a Detroit Red Wing guy, right? And that's the same with Buffalo now. With we had we had a kid in Kamloops, Matt Lindgren. Okay, took him in the 4th round last year. He's a D-man. Okay, is that Marty Stein's guy? No, it's just a guy that was in my area and that everybody liked him. So, getting to your point, I haven't really had to do anything like that. There are other scouts now who have, they've been with 3, 4 teams, and all of a sudden they got to prove themselves. What have you done for your team? I can't speak for them, but it's just one of those things. There's, you got to put in the time. You got to put in the work ethic. You got to go to the games. Is there a dinner with the family when you should be going to a game and that? Right. You got to go to these games and you've got to know your players because, for example, again, like when I have my midwinter meetings next week, I got to know my area. If somebody mentions a name, I got to know that guy. I've got to have seen him at least once or twice. When it comes to the draft, we're sitting there and you've seen it as well. There's names coming across the board. And and guys are looking at me. Well, that guy's from the Western Hockey League, or that guy was from the BC Hockey League, and I just go, no, I don't know how he got drafted. We didn't have him on our list, but I got to be able to vouch to say, look, yes, I have seen him. He's not a draft, or I can't just say and go, oh, geez, that's a good pick, and I didn't know about him.
Right.
So you've got to do your homework, and it's just like a player. You got to work your tail off. You got to do that in practice. You got to work hard just to get noticed.
Yeah. And when it comes to scouting, and just as you were talking about getting out and seeing guys, I know some teams and some organizations are shifting away from the eyeballs, live eyeballs, like with video being so accessible now, and scouts can sit at home and watch video, even if it's mandated from the team. Where's Buffalo in that aspect? Are you allowed to watch so many games on video, or do you have to get to see so many games live? How does that work?
Yeah, we do. When Jason Botterill was the GM, and now this is just for what I hear, okay, He was a sole believer in doing video as well, seeing players on video. There's a number of different avenues that you can go. There's Instat, there's Sports IQ. Okay, I'm an Instat fan. When I watch a game, I'll go to Instat because it just kind of shows you just one player shifts. You don't have to watch the whole game. You see these player shifts and that. And we do cycles, okay? But there's nothing like going to a game live and seeing a player, because what you don't see on the TV is him coming back to the bench, the body language, the smashing of the stick, or the chirping at a coach or chirping at the referee and things like that. You're just going by what the camera's showing you, right? So it shows me, some skill work, the shot, skating ability, but I'm a firm believer in going and seeing the kid live.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned those things, because I've heard different people analyze those differently, and I guess it's totally situational. But the chirping, let's say, of another player, right? Some people will think, I don't know, he's got behavioral issues or can't control his temper, and some people I like his fire. Is that have you found yourself in that, depending on who it is and how they're using some of those things?
Oh yeah, there's some timid players out there. I mean, they'll just go about their business. They'll play hard, and they don't pay any attention, to the getting hacked and whacked, or the face rubs or anything like that. But then there comes to a point where you've had enough, and I like to see that fire where it says, it's enough. You pissed me off now, and he takes a swing or does something. That shows me a bit of fire in him, but I also like the timing of it too. Right. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it. Okay, there's got to be a reason for it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. When you were talking about winning the Stanley Cups, I just want to go back to Detroit just for a bit, because obviously, organizational success, anyone a part of that organization feels it. What was that like from a scout, whether you were part-time at that time or full-time? Were you included in that whole celebration, and how was that? How did that feel from your perspective, being involved in that?
Oh, it was amazing. It was like, I've told my wife this, I've told my kids this, and anybody that listens, I've always wanted to be in the NHL, but apparently I didn't really, say how I wanted to be in the NHL. So when we won the Stanley Cup there, those first 2 years, it was just amazing, and especially the first year, because Detroit hadn't won a Stanley Cup for a long time. And so I remember being, I remember being in the hotel in Livonia, and we were going to go to the game that night, and everybody's meeting around it, and Gordie Howe's there, and everybody's milling about Gordie Howe, and you feel nervous, and I go and shake his hand. I'm Marty Stein, on scout, and he does the patented elbow thing, and get picture taken, and so that was just a process. I was picked up at the airport, by a driver, and then you go to the rink. You got these special special seats and that, and of course we win the cup. We get to go down on the ice. We have the all access passes, and I'm going, this is surreal, right? And then we go, after the game, we go up to the owner's box, because in Joe Louis Arena, the owner's box was at the one end, okay, up above where the Zamboni is. And it's just a massive suite, and there's a huge party there, right? And Steve Yzerman brings a cup up, and the owner's there, and family's there, and it's all a blur now. But the next year we won it again. So I'm thinking, okay, now I kind of know what to do. This is all that. But it's just amazing, and yes, we were included in everything. And I like to think that any NHL team that does go that far and does win the Stanley Cup, they do the same thing. Right. I mean, you watch the celebrations out on the ice, and you're panning the ice and that, and you see families and that, and I look, oh, there's so-and-so the scout, and there's so-and-so scout, and there's an assistant GM and that. So it's pretty cool. That
is cool. I've told the story a few times on here, just like my experience at training camp there. I don't even know what year it was now, but I went to Detroit, and and just the feeling of like the culture was just different there than any other team that I'd been with. I mean, from the players all the way, from the training staff all the way up, you know, and you know, to your point, saying any team that wins it would probably do the same thing. And I would agree with you, because to be a winner, you probably have to have that family-like approach, right, and mentality. But if you were to insert some of the bottom dwellers into that position, I think, like, just from a Time Warp perspective, I bet you there wouldn't be everyone there, you know, because you know, it's just it is so different, like that feeling. And there was definitely an inclusive feeling in Detroit, and that was awesome that everyone got to be a part of that. So super cool. I wouldn't mind going back to Lindgren. So you said Lindgren. I think that's maybe a cool thing just for the listeners to understand. So so he's in your area. This is a Kamloops Blazer guy playing in the WHL. Ended up being a 4th round pick of yours in 2022. Now, you would have eyes on him first, and then you would have your reports at your meetings like you're talking about. And so I don't know how those meetings work. Maybe you might want to tell me that, but you would maybe present on a few players that you think are draftable. And then how does that now get to everyone agreeing on this guy? Does a director of scouting have to come in? Does a GM have to come in? Like, who else has to see him live for him to become a pick with the Buffalo Sabres?
You hit the nail on the head. Like, we go and see our area guys or our area teams and players all the time, and we have a program. Every NHL team has this program called RinkNet, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Western League teams and junior teams that do the same thing. And it's just a huge database. And of course, we are only allowed. We just see ours. We can't see anybody else's teams. So I punch in my reports, and we rate them to where we think they should be, in what round, some comparables to other players. And then what happens is that goes back to our director of amateur scouting, our assistant director of amateur scouting, our chief scout, and we have a couple crossover scouts as well. And so that's their job. They're always crossing over. They're coming to see, Marty's got this guy here that I should be looking at. And so it's just a compilation of all the reports and that. And these guys come, and you know what, we're pretty bang on with all our reports. We're kind of even in what we see, because basically our staff, we've got a lot of guys that, they've been in the business for a long time. So they come across, and then so again, like, we do our midwinter meetings, and we have all our scouts. And what happens then is we kind of mesh. We start putting players where we think they're going to be, and we try to put it in order. Okay, it's our pick. Who do we pick? Boom, this guy. If he's not available, next to the best for him, blah, blah, blah. So second half, we do the same thing. And again, our director of amateur scouting will come, our chief scouts will come. And then in May, we do the same thing again. We have our final meetings, but they call it the final meetings, but there's still a lot of stuff to go on. There's still going to be some movement. But we do our homework too on these kids. It's not just what you see on the ice. We got to look up, are there any red flags in this kid? Does this kid drink? Is there problems with family life? What kind of friends does he hang out with? There's a whole bunch of things that comes into his portfolio. And then come in June, and there's the combine in Buffalo, where you bring all, the top 100, 110 players, and they do the fitness testing, you do the psychological testing, you do all this stuff. So again, it's another thing that you put these kids through the ringer, and by the time the draft comes, the list that you have, that's more or less it. We've done our homework, so we know exactly who we want, who we're high on, and we put them accordingly.
Right. So you would go, like, would you have a list like 1 to 200 or whatever, like to see, like, or do you just try and zero in on maybe the 15, 20 guys that are in your pick slots?
Well, right now it's more or less the top 15, top 15, top 20, and then we try to get our top 70 guys, top 100 guys, and that sort of thing. And then once we kind of seen what we've got, probably round 6, round 7, I know our guys, our head guys have always said, if there's a guy out there that you really feel strongly about, start banging the table or let me know. And, and so we have done that where we get, somebody, let's just roll the dice on this kid. For example, there could be a kid in college, and here's a kid you can tuck away for 4 years because you don't have to sign him for 4 years when he's in college. If you draft him out of the CHL, you've only got 2 years to sign him. But you also want to hit a home run. Yeah, like last year we had 10, 11 picks. We had 3 in the first round. We like to think that every one of our picks is a player that can make the Buffalo Sabres. Okay, it's not a friend of a friend. Let's do him a favor. Right. That's happened. Yeah. But you want to make sure that you've got a player that you really want and that has a chance of playing.
Right, and it's a totally imperfect science. I mean, as it's been said, it's hard to project 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids, right? And even with all the greater bandwidth, right, of like the extent of what you're going to with the psychological testing, the fitness testing, and the background checks, and it's still tough. I would love to be, and I'm sure there's lots of fans that would like to be in the war room per se, if that's what the right word would be, for the discussions, because I would assume it takes a well-tenured man like yourself that's been around it, like to have a voice, right? Because there must be guys that you like and others don't, and that's where you got to figure it out. I mean, how much do you like them? How much do you want to go to bat for them?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's more or less in the later rounds, and that's where the area scouts come in.
Yeah.
Your top half of the picks, we more or less like them, okay? If there's a player we have come to the conclusion as a group, yes, we like him, and that is why he's there. We're not going to have 3 guys love him and 3 guys hate him. Why are we doing this? Why is this player there then? Right? When we get to that point, he's got to be a player that can help.
Yeah. Is the last in all? I don't know if you were around for a draft with Steve or not, but you're obviously there with Ken a lot, and now you've been through a couple with the Sabres. Is it generally the GM's call? I mean, I've heard that it's usually like the GM's call 1, 2, 3. Although I should preface this: the GM has to own all the picks because that's what his job is. But generally speaking, like, he would want to have eyes himself on some of these guys, and then after that, he would defer to his staff for the picks, or how does that usually work?
Yeah, well, with Ken, we had our director of amateur scouting when I first started was Joe McDonnell, and he now has the same job with the Dallas Stars with Jim Mill there. And everything kind of went through him, but it was still, Ken still had to give the stamp of approval, okay. And then we went to Tyler Wright. Tyler Wright, Tyler, he knows all the players. He's the one that basically is going to have the last word, and Ken gave him that ability to do that. It's still Ken's call. They're going to say, hey, Ken Holland did this. And now they're both in Edmonton, and they're getting flack over there apparently. So anyways, they still got a good timeline. But then with Steve comes on board with the Red Wings, and Chris Draper is the director of amateur. Chris Draper ran the draft. He did everything there. Bottom line, it's still Steve's stamp of approval. But they've come to an agreement. So, yeah, this is the guy we have. And then again with Jerry Fort and Kevin Adams, that's the same thing. Jerry's very, very knowledgeable. He goes all over the place, and just like Chris was too. But the bottom line is the GM, it's going to be his stamp of approval, but he's got a really, really trusted director of amateur scouting, assistant GM, and anybody who is involved in that process.
Right. Is there an organizational philosophy that you've seen in the differences? Meaning, like, I don't know, like let's say like the Wings in the 90s, there it seemed like they were a puck possession type team. They wanted to have high flying skaters, or maybe the let's just say the Flyers wanted to have more of a grit presence. It seemed like, is that something that would actually happen at the draft level? Like, these are the types of players we like, or are you just kind of looking for the best player?
Well, it's kind of yes and yes. Back in the 90s, there was no salary cap. I remember, in 96, 97, there's no salary cap. And the Red Wings, God, we were getting Luc Robitaille, Brett Hull, all these guys to win the Stanley Cup. And these guys have had already made all this money. And Ken Holland would go to him and says, here's the pie. How much of the pie do you want? I'll give you the whole pie. If I give you the whole pie, we're not going to win. Okay? And so all these guys came to an agreement that, okay, this is how much money is going to be put out. We just want to win. Okay? Salary cap comes in, which puts everybody on an even plane. Now you're looking for the best, basically the best player available. Some drafts are really strong. This year's draft is going to be strong. There's a lot of good Western kids, in the WHL. The Ontario League, Quebec League, I heard, is not as strong as it used to be. So it kind of goes in cycles. Bottom line is we're still trying to get the best player.
Just want to take a short break from my conversation with Marty Stein to remind you that Up My Hockey is more than a podcast. It is more than the great guests that I try to give you every week with the conversations about how to be your best and how to maximize your potential and what scouts are looking for, like in this case here with Marty Stein, who's been doing it for 25 years. It's also many things. It's a holistic idea to development. It's developing the person behind the hockey player. It's talking about the intangibles required to be your best. And that exists in many places. These concepts, these ideas, these lessons, strategies, you can find them at upmyhockey.com, where you can find the entire list of services, whether you are a team or an association or an individual that would like to explore what mindset and peak potential looks like and act on it. And it's also a Facebook group. It's Up My Hockey Facebook group. There's a Facebook group there that's completely free. Parents from all over North America come together, and I ask questions. We have conversations. I share clips with some of my interviews. We talk hot topics. We share mental performance tactics, how to support your athlete. All this good stuff exists at Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. You can also follow me on Instagram at Jason Podolin. And as I'm sure you know, if you haven't already, these interviews are posted on my YouTube channel, Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin. Surprise, surprise. So if you do want to see the entire interview, that is where you can see it. I also post clips there as well and video tutorials and things of that nature. So lots of places to follow Up My Hockey and to see what it's all about. Really appreciate your support wherever you choose to consume the content from Up My Hockey. But there is a place for you out there. Also, if you get in touch on my website and the contact email address or your contact form, that I will get your email address and you can add it to the email list where the content comes direct to you and you don't have to go looking for it. So once again, thank you so much for being here today. Happy New Year. This is the first episode released in 2023. I hope you're enjoying it. And now back to the episode with Marty Stein. Since you're talking about this year's draft, where you mentioned it, and we're recording this hours before the gold medal game here at the World Junior Championship, and Connor Bedard, if anyone is a hockey fan and doesn't live under a rock, you've seen what this kid is doing here at this tournament, and draft eligible, of course, and some are saying he is the next generational player. What do you see in him specifically, I guess, that you like, or maybe even things that you maybe don't like, or maybe things that you think might be a challenge for him at the next level?
He's a game changer. He's such a dynamic player. I've had the pleasure of watching him live 3 times, and just the way he plays. For example, there's a puck that got thrown in towards him, and it was about waist high, and he knocked it down. Not only did he knock it down, but he knocked it right down to his stick. Some guys would just knock it down and it'll flutter away 3 or 4 feet and you got to go get it. This is just knock it down. Boom, there it is. His shot, he can shoot from anywhere, is such a quick release. And it's kind of funny you brought him up. Watching TSN this morning, they did a feature on him. And, they're talking to the mom and dad, they're talking to the neighbors. And here's a kid that was shooting in the backyard. There were broken windows. There's against the garage door. They even had a short a bit there where they went to Maui for a 10-day vacation. He brought his hockey sticks and he brought his roller skates along, and he's stick handling. He's stick handling in the house and everything. Here's a kid that has been eating and living hockey his whole life. Okay, and there's a reason why he's where he is right now. He's just phenomenal. Now, having said that, whatever team gets him, they're still going to have to surround him with some talent as well. Because if he makes a pass, who's going to give it back to him? Like you can't have a young kid like that, always going out and getting the puck. He's going to get banged around a lot.
Yeah, I didn't see him live, and like I just only kind of saw the highlights of him, and there's obviously a ton to like when you watch the highlight package of sort of anyone. But I was like, I'm not sure if he sees the ice or uses people around him very well. And then I was like, this tournament, I was like, oh my God, he sees the ice amazingly. Like, he has really good vision and makes those passes that, only really elite players can make. So he totally quelled that question mark for me. The other thing that to me, great players seem to be able to find space all the time, right? Or they have a little bit more time than other people. And it's kind of an interesting thing to try and dissect, but I was wondering, it doesn't, like, he's quick, but do you think he's fast? Like, he seems to be able to turn it on and off, but I don't know, like, he doesn't really have breakaway speed, would you say? Or where do you think
No, he doesn't. You know what, when he doesn't have the puck, he's skating around and he's back checking, he doesn't have a great speed, just like you said. It's about average. It's adequate for the WHL, and I'm sure once he gets stronger and bigger, he's going to get a better stride in that. But where his quickness is his agility and quickness with the puck. The kid can turn on a dime. He can go laterally. He can stop. He can, he'll break the defender's ankles, for God's sake, sometimes, right? So that's one of his strengths. And then, and like you said, his vision. When he's got the puck, he could be looking this way and all of a sudden the puck's going this way. And you watch some of the highlights, just his eyes, where they're going. And it's just like a basketball point guard, right? He's looking this way and boom, there's the puck going the other way, or the ball going the other way. So, no, he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah, he's and I like you talking about his edges, and maybe that's something that I've been working on, like with my youth players coming up. It's just like that ability to change direction, but also to change direction and maintain your speed while you're doing it, right? Like, I think that's something that he's tremendous at. He's able to have the deception and then to turn back, but he's not turned back and he's stopped, and he's actually accelerating out of that turn, and now he's creating more space for himself. And I totally agree with that. It's interesting watching a guy like Fantilli. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because before this tournament, there was, not a lot of discussion, but there was like maybe there's a chance that Fantilli could be one, right? That there's a little bit of a horse race here. Obviously, Bedard has lit this tournament up and kind of seems to have changed it. It seems like everyone in the world thinks he'll go number one. But watching Fantilli, my God, he's big, strong, fast. Like, he seems more explosive to me than Bedard. And like when I try and project that to the NHL, like, I think that he's more of a can't miss as far as player is concerned. How do you feel about him? Like, he hasn't shown as well from points, but he definitely has a facility that's pretty impressive.
He looks, I think you hit the nail on the button there. He's a kid, probably, just because of his size and maturity, he might be more of an impact player right away. I still think Bedard is going to be a player that can change a game. Fantilli will probably be a more consistent player to begin with. Yeah. Because of his size, he's already a man, and I really think Bedard is going to be one of those players. Once he gets stronger, he's going to be so hard to knock off the puck, and and not that he needs to get knocked off the puck, but his agility and, like I said, his edges are just incredible. I mean, they're two different players.
Yeah.
Is any team going to go outside the box, and do that? Like last year, you got the Slovak kid. Montreal takes the big Slovak kid, Sierkowski, and Wright falls down to number 4, and it all becomes who's going to make an impact, who's going to help your team right away. I don't know. I don't know what the thinking there is. I don't think the thinking this year is going to be like it was last year. I still think the Bedard will go first, but whoever gets Fantilli is going to get a hell of a player too. So.
Yeah. Do you think, like, as far as like the guesswork is concerned, is he going to be? Do you think at the end of the day he'll be like a Sidney Crosby? Is he a generational guy like some people are thinking?
Probably.
Yeah.
But again, it all depends who you get to play with him.
Yeah.
Sidney Crosby was lucky. He gets Malkin. They get Malkin in the next draft, and then they had Fleury as their goaltender, and then all of a sudden, well, geez, that's not a bad thing to build around.
Right.
Now, having said that, too, they're saying that in Edmonton as well. You've got McDavid, you got Draisaitl. Why aren't they winning? You still got to surround those guys with players.
Yeah.
You've got to have those bottom six guys that can help the team.
Do you see Bedard as a center or a winger? Like, I know he's playing wing here, but he's I believe he's a center in Regina when he's playing in his junior team. What do you think he projects at the NHL level?
A forward. He's going to be a forward, right? So I don't know. Is he strong on the draw? I don't think because of his size, he's not that strong with faceoffs right now, again, because of his strength. But he's all over the ice. You can't really say that he's going to be a center. On the power play, he's always rolling around. First thing he's the QB on the point. Next thing you know, he's off on the half wall. He's letting pucks go and that. I think the deception is a lot of these players, they're not really centers, they're not really wingers. Maybe if you're a big guy, you're going to be a power forward and that. But with Bedard, I think he's just going to be a swing man. He's going to be all over the place.
Right.
There's the puck. Go do what you want.
Right. And just, everyone's saying a ton of good stuff about him, and I know when your skill set is that high, defense is overlooked. He definitely needs to learn how to play the other side of the puck. I don't know how much teams want him to play the other side of the puck because a lot of his offensive instincts are timing that transition and the turnovers and getting those breakaways. So I do understand that there's a little give and take in that area. But the one thing that I think that I saw that I wasn't like, when I was like, ooh, I don't know if I like that look, was when he had that one turnover and he gave it all in his back check and he kind of bumped into the post and then almost like he died a little bit there, and that puck goes cross crease. I can't remember who that was against. Like, you talked about body language and stuff earlier when you're watching players. Like, well, I don't know if you were to dissect that. Like, does that tell you anything about him? Or is that any type of a red flag at all?
No, I don't think so. He could have been tired. He could have been frustrated. He's the last seconds of a shift, and those are the things that you can fix. When you get to pro level, and again, as well as I do, playing defense it's not, it's a skill, but it's also a mindset. And you have to want to play defense and get back hard. It's a 200-foot game. The offensive guys, it's not like the old days where Brett Hull, God, he never came back across the red line. His job was to score goals, and raise his hands. So, but Bedard, you can't teach what he has right now, but what he doesn't have is maybe playing some solid defense. That'll come.
When it comes to players, and I said before we started, I definitely want to talk about this. I think it's important because a lot of the listeners here are aspiring players, that listen to Up My Hockey and the parents of those players. And one of the questions that always comes up when I'm standing in rinks is, what are scouts looking for? Or how do I stand out? Or how do I get noticed? Is there a criteria that you follow, or what would be the things that you're looking for in a hockey player when you're showing up at these junior rinks?
Well, there is a number of things, and the one thing that I really allude to is when I was with Detroit, we had, or there still is, a tournament in Traverse City, Michigan, and 8 NHL teams bring their top prospects to that tournament, and they're allowed three players that have played 2 years of professional hockey. Okay, and they're usually American Hockey League players, but basically they're junior drafts and they're invites, players that you think that help the organization. Now these guys are still a ways from the NHL. I watched that, and these kids young men can skate. They skate. Well, you came to training camp in Traverse, okay, and you were probably there, just after the tournament itself, and so you saw what these kids are doing. They're busting their butts. They're going hard. Fast forward to when I go to a rink. I still remember this. I was at a BCHL hockey game. There was this kid that was flying around. He had some skill in that. And the guy next to me was a fan. I said, that kid's going to play in the NHL. And I says, I'm thinking to myself, there ain't no hope in heck this kid is going to play in the NHL. He was all over the place. Skill level was okay, but yeah. Again, you got to have a mindset. There's certain skills you got to have. And the biggest thing is you have to be able to skate. If you can't skate at a high level or a high speed, you're not going to make it. I don't care how skilled you are. Now, this is me, and I think a number of scouts do the same thing. If you can't skate, you're not going to be able to play at the next level because everybody can fly. Okay, and if you're a type of kid that can stick handle in the phone booth, but you're just in one spot, again, you're not going to make it. So skating is one. Skill level, yeah, you got to have skill. If you're a big kid, play like a big kid. If you're a small kid, play like a big kid. Okay, you've got to show no fear because you're playing against big guys. Okay, as soon as you start sidestepping, the hit and everything like this, there's a lot more of that coming. Okay, there's only one puck. Everybody wants the puck. Okay, what are they going to do to get that puck? So you got to be able to be really, really quick and have some skill.
Yeah. As far as I don't know if that term's still used, but perimeter players, let's say, or guys that'll go kind of to the dirty areas. You kind of need both. I mean, you don't want to have too many perimeter guys, I guess. But how does a guy who's smaller, let's say, maybe a puck distributor type of guy who creates space for other people, but not really a first guy in the forecheck is going to bang anybody. What do you want to see from that type of player when it comes to competitiveness? Where can they show their heart or their will, I guess, if that's the type of player that they are?
You've got to be willing to take a hit. Okay. You might not be the most physical player going out and hitting guys. And I've seen, these smaller players go try to hit a big kid. Well, the big kid's elbows, when they're hard elbow pads, are the same height as the kid's head, right? And so the kids are going to get hurt. So if you're a smaller player, you still got to be willing to go into that traffic. I mean, not try to go get hurt or anything, but you got to be willing to go out and try to get that puck. Maybe bump it, just bump off and use the bumper, the D-man as the bumper, but still try to get in and get physical. You don't have to get 20 hits a game to be effective. Okay, right. But you got to be willing to go in there and take a couple hacks and whacks and that, but still come out with the puck.
Right. Yeah, when I'm talking with my players, I think a guy like Artemi Panarin, I think is just so good at that. He'll go into traffic and he doesn't ever hit anybody, but he very often comes out with the puck, right? Because he's just so skilled with his IQ and also his stick awareness, right? To be able to get pucks and be deceptive with that. And I wouldn't call him. I mean, nobody's scared to play against Panarin in a physical sense, but I mean, you are scared of that you might not end up with the puck. So I think there's, so in other words, he's competitive, right? I think he's really competitive on pucks, but just not a way that like you said, a Tom Wilson might be competitive on pucks.
Yeah, but he still has to have the speed to get out of that situation, right? I mean, You go in, get the puck in that, but you got to get out of there quick too. Right. Don't wait for somebody to hack and whack you again, and then you've defeated the purpose of going in and getting the puck.
100%. Is there, as far as the little areas of the game, I've had a few conversations with coaches and stuff, and maybe even now I'm working at the junior A level and talking with different colleges, and the players are so concerned about their stat line, right? I mean, across the board, right? How many points do I have, and what does that look like? But every team, let's just say a 5'6" D-man, a 5'6" D-man is usually somebody that obviously can still skate, as you said, and wants to exit the zone and wants to defend well. That's not going to be somebody that has a big stat line. Do you draft guys, or do you look at players for what role they might be as a pro, or are you just trying to find the highest skill player and maybe we should talk about that, right? Because the skill set of a 5'6" D-man is different than the skill set of a top of the umbrella D-man, right? So you would say he's less skilled, but there is still obviously a skill set required to be a 5'6" D-man successfully. So how do you unpack that, and is something that you draft directly for?
You know what? That's a great point, because in the last just this past week and just before Christmas, I was watching some teams, and there's some D-men that are exactly the same thing. They don't do anything outstanding, but they don't do anything wrong. You know, they are so dependable. They're defensive. You know, it's not that they stay within their comfort zone with the puck and that, but when they do get the puck, they make move the puck quickly. You know, and it's not that mindset. If I don't have the puck, I can't make a mistake. Well, yes, you can. But excuse me, these guys are your 4, 5, 6, 7 D-men, right? Every team needs those guys. You got to be able to have a guy that is dependable, because you might have an offensive guy who's worried about his stats or whatever. He's always up there. So you still need somebody to hang back. And there's probably 3 or 4 guys that I'm looking at right now that fit that mold. You know, I would love to have them on our team. Plunk them in the American League or in the East Coast League, watch them develop, right? Those are guys that you need. Now, if you do have a kid that's, more or less looking at points, now, for example, in the BCHL, and the BCHL is a great league if you want to be discovered and get a scholarship, and, if you play pro, that's just bonus. But if you want to get an education, there's some guys who are thinking, the more stats I have, the better it is. That's not always the case. Like I talk to a lot of college coaches who ask their opinion on certain players, and that it's just what they need. It's what their needs are. Now they've already got 2, 3 guys that can put up points. They need those types of D-men or a bottom 6 forward that is going to be really good in their defensive zone. So regardless of what type of player you are, there is going to be a need for it.
All right. I know, and that's kind of the thing, and it's the challenge for me, like working with these players, to get them to believe that, because and we can find a ton in history that have been like average junior players, let's just say, like an average WHLer, meaning like a third liner, like maybe 15 goals, 15 assists, but like does what he does well, who is an average AHLer who then turns out to be an average NHLer, but no one that ever blew up the radar anywhere, right? Because those guys just continue to do what they do, and they do it well on every level. And then there's also the guys that we've seen that have been high point producers at such and such a level, but then that's a tighter funnel, right? Like those and sometimes those guys can adjust to the different roles. So, I mean, that's the beauty of the art, I guess, of what you're doing, is like, who are those guys? Because not everybody is a half wall guy in the PP, right? There's only 2 guys on a team that are doing that.
Yeah. Just kind of in that area that we're talking about, Brent Gilchrist, Brent very, very well, as we all do. And I'd known Brent since he was born. Okay, his older brother and me were good friends, and blah, blah, blah. Brent goes to the Western Hockey League. He's, he plays with the Kelowna Wings, goes to Spokane in top 10 scoring. He gets drafted in the 4th round by the Montreal Canadiens. They send him down to Sherbrooke, I believe. Was it Sherbrooke or Cornwall? I can't remember what the farm team was at the time. And so Pat Burns, who was the coach, Hall of Fame coach, he loved Brent, the way he played, his grit, determination, played 200 foot in the game. Well, Brent went from a top 10 scorer in the WHL to one of the best defensive hockey players in the NHL. And did he win the Frank Selke, or he was in line for that award as a top defensive player? So just because you're a top goal scorer, and you think you got to do this to play at the next level, no, you've got your attributes, and he changed it completely around. He did the 180 and became a great defensive player.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing that some players are unwilling to do or don't know how to do, right? I mean, because it is hard. I mean, not everybody's a point producer, as I've said now, repeating myself, but like, it's those guys. And a lot of times those guys that are drafted, well, it's just like, I mean, the AHL is a major junior all-star league, really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's the best players from the WHL, OHL, and the Q and across the world now that come there, and now so they've all been kind of the best players on their team, and then that funnel happens again at the NHL level, and so there's every time you go somewhere you have to reinvent yourself. Usually, like when you're starting somewhere, there's only so many Connor Bedards that are going to get drafted, and they're going to be given the number one spot on the power play with the best players to go fill the net. I mean, like, generally speaking, like, you're not walking into those situations, especially if you're like a prospect, let's say with the Lightning, who've been great now for how many years. Like, what are the top guys going to do there, even if they have a really high skill set? I mean, there's guys in those spots that are going to be there. So you have to, if you want to be an NHLer, you have to do something else, right?
Yeah. What do you want to do, or how will you stay at that level? And like I said, there's only one puck. There's only so many guys that can score. But how do you want to stay on that team? Because you got to be able to do other things. Okay, you were a goal scorer in junior. Okay, you played in the national team. You played in the World Junior Tournament and that. Played in the NHL as well. But you still had to learn the defense. And that's why you stuck around. You had to learn both ends of the rink. And so that's what really has to get through to these kids. I don't always have to get points to maintain my status on a team. What else can you bring to the team?
Yeah. And if you're sitting there watching, Marty, so you're in the crowd, and because the one thing I'm saying, Gary Davidson was on the other day, and he's like, I do look at the points because, I mean, some players are just able to do that. Like, I'd like to know, like, who's able to produce, right? That is something that I want to know. But when I'm in the crowd, I'm looking for ways that production happens, right? Like how are they moving through space, and what are the things that they're doing? And when I'm talking with my players, it's sort of the same thing. Like, don't get wrapped up in the actual results of the production. Like, it's not like you had a better game because you scored 2 goals, but like, how did you create those scoring chances, and how are you doing that? Is that kind of how you do it? Like, how are they manufacturing? What their puck touches look like necessarily, and not really what it is at the score sheet at the end of the day?
I think that's hockey IQ. Okay. That's another point that I look for. Are you the type of player that gets the puck for a D-man, for example? Do you get the puck and you just bank it off the glass just to get it out of the zone? Okay. Do you show composure with the puck? Somebody's on you. Do you hold on the puck just that extra second just to make a good play? Or the opposite, do you hold on to the puck a little bit too long that you get checked? If you're a forward, are you just a dump and chase kid where, you never have the puck? Okay, all you do is chase. And once you get the puck, instead of looking beside you, there's a guy open 10 feet away, give it to him. No, I'm going to dump it in again, and I'm going to chase it again, right? So there's all this hockey IQ that I look at as well. What do you do with the puck when you get it? Are you creative? Is there a result to your means, or a means to whatever you've done? And that, so there's a whole bunch of different components in that. And some players get it quickly. Some players have it already in that. But those are the things that we look for.
What does a report look like, if you wouldn't mind expanding, like, as far as maybe there's a skill set criteria, and then is there also like a written component of it, of what you think this player is or could be?
What I look for, each team has got different things in that, but it's more or less the same. We're all looking for the same thing. We're looking for skating. We're looking for hockey IQ, the compete, your agility, your edges, and that. We also write down our notes on what we saw, and again, this is just a compilation of all the notes and all the reports that we've done. That's what gets sent in, and then, like I said, with the midwinter meetings and our end-year meetings, we take all that information, we funnel it, and then we decide who's going to go where.
So the coaching staff sees these players, every day, right? They see them on their good days and their bad days. They see them at practices. They see them in the gym. Is that a resource for you? Like, is that somebody you call and say, hey, give me the scoop? And do you think you're getting the true scoop when you're asking a coach about his player? How does that whole thing work?
I have my sources. I've been doing this long enough where, where I know which guys are going to help me and, pardon the term, who is going to bullshit me. Okay. But 95% of the guys, they tell me how it is. I ask them, are there any red flags? Okay. On this kid, should we be staying away from this kid? I ask them, would you draft a kid and that sort of thing? And basically these kids are all great kids. They're all great guys, and very, very rarely do you come across where this kid is a real pain in the butt. He's lots of red flags. That kid's not going to be on the team, really, if he's causing that much concern. A lot of the coaches and GMs, they tell me, the backgrounds and their strengths, their weaknesses. They're not going to pump up the kid too much. There's maybe one or two guys that'll do that. But I like to think that, most of the players or the coaching staffs I talk to, I even talk to trainers. I know a few of the trainers and that, and they're more or less the same because they're in the dressing room all the time and they see these kids. I get any type of information that I can just to build a dossier on these kids. Right. And they're all pretty good.
All right, just take one more short break here from the discussion with amateur scout Marty Stein to let you know about the Peak Potential Hockey Project guided mission. The next one is starting on January 16th. So if you are a hockey player out there and if you want to take your game to the next level in the second half and have an amazing playoff when the lights are the brightest and the games mean the most, and you want to spend 4 weeks with me to tune up your mindset and to tune up your mental agility and keep your confidence sky high and build your resiliency, then I know the place for you. And that's January 16th. With me in my guided mission, you'll get 4 weeks of content. It's only 20 minutes roughly a day of work. Everyone is wondering what that is. It's you log in to your profile online. It could be on your phone or on your computer. You watch 3 or 4 videos in the day. There might be an assignment afterwards. The videos are short. They're to the point. You have one from Monday to Friday, and then we have a coaching call. Usually Sunday evening is a good time for the players to get together. We cover what the content is. That's a coaching call with me and whoever else is in the group, and then we move on to the next week. So 4 weeks long, 4 solid weeks. You get to keep the program after you're done for 6 months. You can review it again and access the content, and it is making a huge difference for players. So even if you're rolling right now and you feel good and you want to get your game to the next level and even higher level, then you should be curious about how to do that. And I suggest you are perfect for the program. If you are maybe struggling or didn't have the first half that you really like and you really want to dial things up or feel you need to dial things up in the second half, this is also perfect for you. It's going to change some of your storylines. It's going to change some of the narratives that you tell yourself about high performance and what it means to be a hockey player and what it means to you to be a hockey player and where you fit in to that ecosystem. And one of the things I always say to players when I'm talking to them and they're trying to decide if they want to take the course or not, this is all about building your personal operating manual. That's what the Up My Hockey Peak Potential Project is about. It's about building your operating manual to be your best in any moment, to maximize practice time, to maximize your development, to maximize your on-ice performance, to be able to maximize how you show up in the locker room. All these things is unique to you as an individual and as a hockey player. And we all have strengths and weaknesses as a hockey player, and we all have strengths and weaknesses as an individual, as the person behind the player. And we talk about both sides of that coin, because if you are thinking yourself as exclusively a hockey player and you haven't thought about yourself as a person that plays hockey, then you're missing the other side of the coin. We need to develop personally to develop the on-ice skills that we want to be able to perform the way we want. So we talk about both those ideas during the 4 weeks together. And if this all sounds new to you, then that's fantastic, because that means there's so much for you to learn and so many new ways for you to turn the dial up on your own development and your own performance. So if that's something you want to take advantage of, January 16th is my next one. Like I said, you can access that and get enrolled at upmyhockey.com. There's also a little onboarding form there. If you're a little bit uncertain, you want to see if the course is right for you, by all means get on there and do that, or you can reach out to me on any social media channel and ask me whatever question you want. I want people to be comfortable, and I want you to make sure that the program is right for you. you. Ideally, I say second year Pee Wee going up into Bantam is a great place to start, but my goodness, obviously I designed it more for midget junior age players as the ideal age bracket to be in if it's a first time, right? That's when you really should have taken it by now. So get involved if you're a midget Bantam player. If you're in junior for sure and you want to get that D1 scholarship or earn those PP minutes or whatever the case may be, it's open to you, and I encourage you to enroll. So once again, now back to my interview with Marty Stein.
Yeah, I had Scott Borek on, who is the head coach of Merrimack. Merrimack. Yeah. I'm told I pronounced that wrong. Merrimack. And he rebuilt that program there. And as you know, D1 head coaches are responsible, and their staff are responsible for the recruiting as well as coaching the team, right? They don't have scouts in the ground. And one of the things that he said when he went around rebuilding was that he really, for the first time in his career, like put a massive emphasis on the locker room, meaning like he really, paramount for him was like the type of person, like the type of character, like who was coming in, and he contacted all the other programs, like whoever wore a letter, and he was trying to recruit players from other teams. And anyways, I mean, they're sitting number 8 right now in the nation, as high as number 5 this year, and this is in a 4 or 5 year rebuild, is what we call the NHL level, and it's been super successful for him. So as far as like you saying good kids, like I'm working with these kids too, and there are a lot of good kids. There's quiet kids. There's more kids that are more gregarious, right? There's kids that are first to the rink and last to go, and like there's just different ways that a locker room's constructed. But is there becoming more of an emphasis on that, or like a requirement that like this is the type of person that we want to be a Buffalo Sabre?
I mean, it's like family. You want everybody in your family you want to get along with. And that is a huge emphasis now with teams is that locker room. You got to have everybody getting along. And when you're looking at the college level or junior teams, potentially there's, you've got this kid for 4 years, and the last thing you want to do is have this kid, your first year, all of a sudden he's causing a problem. Okay. And how do you get rid of this kid all of a sudden? At college, you can't trade him. Okay, you can release them. I don't know how that works. Are you on the hook for 4 years of education? In junior level, you trade the kid, or you do release him. So, but I think that's a huge part. If everybody gets along, everybody's happy, and when everybody's happy, you get a lot more things done.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion even there, because the getting along, I think sometimes, like when you say that, I think I understand what you're saying. Like family, it's not always sunshines and rainbows all the time. And I think a good locker room is a locker room that also challenges each other and is competitive, right? Yeah. But it's like how that happens, right? Like is it a team first mentality of why we're doing this and why we are competing, or is this about fighting to get your own as an individual? And I think that that is kind of where the psychology aspect from you of the game comes in, is like how is this guy really driven, right? Is he driven by, spotlights on me, or is he driven by like, how do we make everyone better around you? And I think that's a personal type of, intrinsic motivation. What's his intrinsic motivators? And anyways, a total science to that though. Like when you get the culture right and the rooms right, like it's a beautiful thing, because success happens on the outside.
I think in any sport, regardless of what you're playing in that, you've got to have everybody getting along. You've got to have everybody as a brotherhood or a sisterhood, and that you've got to have everybody on the same page. And I think that's just the main focus now with teams. I've always been a team guy. I love team because I love this guy. I love playing with this guy and this sort of thing. I play golf and that, but once you get to the golf course, you're playing with a partner for some money, right? Yeah. It's still a team thing. You got to get along with the guy. So that's the great feature of playing team sports, and especially when you get dressing room, you can hardly wait about, until you get into the dressing room. A lot of players, and I'm sure like you, when you retired, what do you miss the most? I miss the dressing room. I miss the room. I miss the guys, and if you're all on the same page, good things happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you get to know these guys and you're watching them throughout the course of a year, and I mean, kind of, I guess there's a year cycle, maybe a year and a half cycle where you're looking forward to the next year's draft a little bit while you're watching the guys in front of you. And you probably take these guys out, I would assume, like maybe for dinner. I mean, if you're a Western guy, and try and get them to know a little bit, as you're saying. Is it hard to disconnect, or is there a requirement to it? Like, obviously you want these guys to succeed, the guys that get signed, the guys that get moved on, and track them. Is there ever like that connection there? And also, is there ever like, do you ever feel compelled to be like, say, a guy floundering in the A, or something's happening there? Is there ever any phone calls internally with that about, well, you know, maybe you should try him here, or I see him being successful more with this role or something? Like, is there an organizational kind of communication, or is once you draft a guy, it's done?
No, there is communication, both in Detroit and with the Sabres. I routinely got calls for, one year, Fisher in Detroit. He'd give me a call about a kid that I saw in the BCHL, for example, playing college. Marty, you interviewed him. What did you think about him? You know, and I'll give him my input on that. By the way, I don't think we take guys out for dinner anymore. They're just we do so many Zoom meetings and FaceTime meetings, and that, you know, that's where we do the interviews. And okay. I would like to go out for dinner with them, you know, and talk, but then you know, going back with the Sabres and that, I talk to Adam Mayer a lot, you know, and so we talk a lot about these players. You saw them. What do you think? I give them input. You know, it's not that it's my final word. Yeah, bring the kid up and that sort of thing.
Right.
There's a number of different avenues that have to come to terms first before we do that.
That's funny. That's Merzies. That's funny. That's Merzies. I was going to say that because I played with him too in the Toronto organization. So that's cool.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Kevin and Merzy are there together. He'd be a good guy to talk to. Actually, I should talk to you.
You know what? You can talk to Adam Mayer, talk to Nathan Page. Okay, Nathan Page. Both those guys are just, you know, fantastic guys.
That's awesome.
Fantastic guys to talk to. Very knowledgeable.
A little bit closer to home, and maybe we're getting close to the time slot here that we agreed on. But I find it interesting because I mean you see me now in BCHL rinks, right? Like I'm watching Junior A, and I'm going to some major junior stuff, and comparing the leagues is interesting, right? And now you have a player that's draft eligible in the BCJ, and you have a player that's draft eligible in the West, and you're trying to project maybe even what he would look like in the WHL, let's say a Junior A guy, right? Like what would he do in this league? Well, maybe I should start there. I mean, I assume that you would agree that the WHL is a half step maybe, or a full step more competitive than Junior A. Would you agree to that?
I'd say full step. You know, I think skill level in that. Don't get me wrong. The BCHL has got some very good players. And every year there's usually about five to eight players that are drafted out of the BCHL. But the BCHL itself overall it's a Grand Prix league. It's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, it's a lot of fun to watch. The WHL is really keyed on the pro game. You know, I mean, let's face it, the kids are bigger. They are more skilled overall in that. But they play a pro game just because the way they're coached. You look at the coaches; they're all ex-NHL players or NHL personnel or something like that, right? So they're geared in that way. Now, that's not to say that the BCHL is not talented. I mean, the kids that go to the BCHL, they're there for a reason. They want to take a step where they go to college, okay, get an education, and if they can play pro, that's going to be bonus. The kids that play in the WHL, their first goal right now is to play pro. Okay, they want to forget that college route. College is afterwards; they get all the money. You know, depending on how many years you play, you get money to go to school now. So it's kind of a reverse there, but
yeah. So we're in agreement that so the WHL is a better league or a deeper league, let's say, you know, and so now you got a guy like we'll use the Bradley Nadeau in Penticton, who is, you know, leading the league in points him and his brother by a lot. I've watched him play a few times on some draft lists. He's listed as potentially a first rounder in the NHL draft. that's like for me, and no offense to him, like I just don't know if he'd be doing like if he was in the WHL. Like I don't see him producing like that. Just for me watching his game, like how do you do your best to extrapolate what that would look like if he's amongst more of a peer group, a draft eligible peer group?
One thing about draft lists, they're just lists. They're resources. It's not the Bible. Like there's a central scouting puts out their lists, and there's always guys on there that we question, where they're rated and that sort of thing. And that's why we go and see them play. Kid like Nadeau, he's got a lot of talent. He's going to be going to college. He's grown something like 2-3 inches this past year. He can skate. He's really skilled and that sort of thing. That's at the BCHL level. You put him in the WHL, is he going to do the same thing? I don't know. It all depends on who he plays with. He's fortunate. He's playing on probably the top junior A team in all of Canada. So they kind of have their way with teams. So is he going to get drafted? He's going to get drafted. Yes. Where? We don't know yet.
Right.
But to say that he's a top end first round pick, you're going by what he does in the BCHL. You're not going by what he could do.
Yeah. So I know that's a tough one. Cale Makar, and obviously his success is, people are like, how could 3 players go be before Cale Makar, right? But he got drafted out of the AJHL, and I think, that has to have some type of influence. If he was doing that, in which I'm sure he maybe would have, at the WHL level or at a little higher league, then it would have been a little bit easier to accept the fact that maybe this guy is a generational type player. But that's just my 2 cents. I assume I never watched him his draft year, so I have no idea. I don't even know the other guys that went ahead of him, really what their years were like. But it's credit to him to go that high from the AJ in the first place.
Well, Cale Makar is probably one of the best interviews I ever had. Is when he was in Brooks. Quick side note: he also had the privilege of being able to play for Team Canada. He also he played at the international level when it came to the World Junior A Challenge. He was also in the top prospect game against all players around, sort of thing. Whereas Nadeau, because the BCHL is no longer involved with the CJHL, all you've seen is in the BCHL. So there's no really comparables yet. And that where Makar, he had a lot more games against a lot more higher competition. But
gotcha.
But you could still see it. Makar was phenomenal. And if you were to do the draft again, he'd probably go 1. Who knows?
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think for sure. He, which is interesting. Yeah, that's right. Because he played World Junior, and so you do get to see him against the top prospects, whereas Nadeau won't. Is there Do you think that's the same this year as far as the BCJ is concerned? Have you identified 5 to 8 or 10 players that you think will probably get their names called this year?
5. I think there'll be 5. There might be some dark horses. There always is in that, but right now there's 5 guys that are legit drafts, not high end by any means. Maybe the Nadeau kid, he might be taken, top 3, well, I'd say 2, 3, 4 or something like that. Who knows? Yeah. But there's some later round picks too.
When they're a player like Shane Doan's son who didn't get drafted his first year of eligibility, and then I think he came back and was a first rounder, I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. The second year of eligibility, and now I believe the players are eligible for 3 years. I haven't been tracking the draft obviously nearly as closely as you would. How many players in their second year and third year of eligibility are going now? Like, is there many players that are overlooked in that first year that are actually draft eligible or worthy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There are not as many. You like to take the kid in his first year and that, but there's a lot of kids that I'm sorry. They take a little bit more time to mature. Like, you don't jump from grade 8 to grade 12, right? So Austin Roast, for example, Stacy's kid. Okay, here's a kid that didn't get drafted last year. He's a good player. He's lighting up the Western League now. He's in the top 10 scoring. Now I saw him last night in Kamloops. He had a hell of a game. Is he going to get drafted? Oh yeah, he is. Where? I don't know. But there's a kid in the second year of eligibility and who's really proven himself because he's gotten bigger, a year older, stronger in that, and a lot
Right.
more knowledgeable.
Yeah. That's cool, actually, because, I mean, even from an opportunity standpoint, you know, it's tough to, if you're on a good team, it's tough to step in as a 17-year-old, and if it's your first year, and to be in a position where you're getting big minutes, right, and can kind of be an impact guy. So I even know, like, for instance, one of my guys who I'm a big fan of, Nathan Mackey there in Salmon Arm, right? Like first year of draft eligibility was last year, and he was just new to the league and trying to figure it out. And I mean, earned a spot in the PK and everything else, but he wasn't in a position to really, establish himself as an NHL prospect. But this year he's wearing the C. He's playing in all minutes. He's got 16 goals. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's going to get drafted or not, if he's on that radar, but like I could see a player like him, like, okay, now you get to see him a little bit more, right? You get to understand a little bit more about him and understand what his engine's like. So I do see how that can definitely happen just from an opportunity standpoint as well.
Well, it's just because, again, if you don't get drafted in your first year of eligibility or your second year of eligibility, you end up going to college. You got 4 years there. Mark Howell, he said it best, this is quite a few years ago, says, you know what, sometimes it's the best thing not to get drafted, because if you get drafted, you are stuck in that team's, tree of skill and prospects and that. And you might not get out of that tree ever. If you go to college and you become a free agent and you develop and each year you get better and better and better, all of a sudden you're going to have 32 teams knocking on your door. And that's what's happened. I have a separate list of BCHL players, they're 19, 20 years old. I give it to our guys and say, hey, here's a kid here, or a list of kids. Keep an eye on them. They might be good free agents down the road. But they've been identified. You follow them. If it works out, great. If not, they got their education.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we all know how hard it is to make the NHL, and especially from a later round draft, right? Like, a lot of the times, and I've even told my own story, quite honestly, Marty, like, when you're a drafted guy out of the WHL, like, the window for you to become an NHLer is shorter. It just really is, from the guys that are going to college. I mean, I was 22 years old and led the AHL in goals, and at 23 I was kind of not even you lose that luster, right? Like, I remember Jason Krog coming in as a Hobie Baker Award winner. He was a year older than me, signed for $1 million, played on my team and we're still buddies. I mean, we've joked about this before, but I mean, him as a rookie, a year older than me, had like 20 less points than me in the AHL that year. But he was like, he was the guy, and I was the guy that was like, I was a has-been at that point. You know what I mean? It was just funny the way it works,
Yeah, exactly. There's always somebody behind you wanting your job. And the older you get, the more that back end starts piling up. So you just got to keep going, and you know it as well as I do. So
keep going. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I like about the college unit. I mean, I wouldn't change my major junior experience for anything. I love playing in Spokane, and it was fantastic 4 years there. But as far as the longevity of the game, the guys that go to college, like, whether you're drafted or not, even in that environment, like you said, you have longer to sign those guys, right, at NHL teams. But even if you're undrafted, I mean, you're coming out of there at 22, 23 years old, and you're a man, and you've had a lot of time in the gym and everything else, right? It does. I think it extends your life a little bit there, going that way. But
exactly.
Try telling that to these kids. My son's one of them. He wants to go major junior and straight to the NHL and everything else, right? You just want to get to the airport, get on the plane, and take off. Never mind security and checking in. Just go. Just go. That's a great analogy, yeah, for sure. Anyways, well, Marty, thanks so much for spending 75 minutes here with us. I know you've been around the game, and you'd have been a fun guy to talk to. So thanks for doing that and sharing your wisdom with all the families and players out there. I know there's a lot to learn from our talk. So thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you very much, and I hope I helped a bit. So.
You definitely did. Thank you so much, and best of luck with Buffalo. I wish we didn't even talk about Buffalo, but my goodness, I mean, what an exciting year for you guys. It must be super cool to be a part of something that is now finally like growing, right? It's been a long time, and it looks like you guys are on the cusp of doing something pretty great there.
Youngest team in the league right now, and they're a lot of fun to watch. So,
wow.
So we might let a lot of goals in, but we score a lot too. So that's good.
Hey, we'll leave you with a prediction. Well, maybe two questions about the Sabres. I wanted to talk with you about them. One, where do you think Thompson's going to end up this year as far as goals is concerned? What's his final number going to be?
I like to think he can get 50. He's still got a lot of goals. He's still got a lot of games, and he plays power play. He's playing top line. I like to think he'll score 50.
He's on pace for 66, I think.
Yeah. So, hitting 50, that's just magic.
What a great if he continues that, what an amazing deal for the Sabres as far as what they just signed him for, right? He's looking like a Hart Trophy winner right now. In a lot of ways. So, super cool. And the other guy I wanted to ask you about was Dylan Cousins. So I know you weren't there for that draft, but he's a WHL guy and a point of game guy right now. I think he's super under the radar as far as how effective he's being in that in that ecosystem there. What do you watch the Big Club? I guess I should ask first of all. Is that something you keep eyes on?
Yeah. You know what? I interviewed Dylan when I was with Detroit. I interviewed him in Lethbridge, and like any kid in his draft year, he looks like a high school point guard. He's in his shorts and his t-shirt, and he's about 160 pounds soaking wet. But he's a great interview, and he was a very outgoing person. His dad's a judge, his mom's a judge, the dad's a judge, mom's a prosecutor. They're from Whitehorse, and just a very upbringing family, but very, very human, very, very kind-hearted person, and he loves the game, and it shows out in the ice.
Oh, that's cool. And that maybe goes back to what we were talking about, the locker room, right? Like putting good people who are also good hockey players in those positions. Yeah, I can do this all day. I am going to ask one more follow-up question because of what you just said there. You said a great interview. So I think that's really important for the guys to listen to. How would you define a great interview, or how do you be impressive as a player in an interview situation?
Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Don't try to BS of what you are when you're not that type of player. Tell me about your strengths. Tell me about your weaknesses. Be honest. Tell me you love the game. Don't tell me that you're there because your mom and dad want you to be there. I want the real you. And by the time you get to that level, you are. These kids want to be there. They're there for a reason. I'm interviewing you for a reason because I want you to potentially be a part of our organization. So, right. But that's basically what I look for.
It's that authenticity, I think. It's come up, and I think that's the locker room too. Guys who are authentically themselves are usually good teammates because you know where they stand, you know what they're about. And I think that's the thing when you start seeing guys who are like contrived answers, manufactured responses.
They're agent's answers. The agent will tell you this is what you say.
Right.
Don't give me that crap.
Yeah, I hear you. Awesome. Anyways, well, we'll cut this one off. Thanks again, Marty. I will see you around some rinks, I'm sure, and we'll compare player notes.
You betcha. Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Marty.
Thanks so much for spending your time with me and Marty today on your drive or during your workout or wherever you might be listening to this portion. I appreciate you sticking around to the end. And as always, lots of great takeaways here from Marty Stein, amateur scout with the Buffalo Sabres, and so many good things for young players to understand, to hear, and to know how scouts are looking and how important your off ice character is. What you're made of, who you are as a person, right? And how you bring that authenticity into the locker room and also onto the ice surface to allow your competitive nature to shine and to allow your team spirit to show. And that these guys dig deep now, and like he says, to be a WHL player, even to be an OHL player, to be a college hockey player, you not only have to be a good hockey player, but you have to be a pretty darn good person. But even like anything else, right? Like the levels of good people, a level of good teammate is, what's the way to put it? It's magnified, right, at those levels. So always be working on your interpersonal game, right? How can you build relationships in that locker room? How can you be a better teammate? How can you supply energy in that locker room that's going to make everyone around you better? Because this is something that not only scouts are looking for, but coaches want and general managers want. I love that was a topic of conversation here today with Marty. And once again, the takeaway of, being competitive, something that I think totally is a controllable, something that you need to understand in your game, what that looks like. What does competitive spirit look like? Where can you show that, and how do you do that? Whether you're a playmaker, a small 160-pound playmaker, or whether you're a big bruising defenseman, there are different ways to show compete, and that is definitely something that scouts want. Composure with the puck. If you are someone that gives the puck away without knowing what you're doing with it, that has to stop immediately. I don't care if you're 8 years old or 18 years old. This is something that you need to embrace as a player. Make intentional decisions with the puck. There's only one on the ice, as Marty says, and you need to love it when you have it. It doesn't mean overhandling it, doesn't mean carrying it just for the sake of carrying it, but that means being intentional with your distribution of it and making plays on purpose, right? That is something that stands out a mile away when a player does not know what he's doing with the puck, does not look like he wants the puck, and makes poor decisions with the puck. So puck awareness and hockey IQ are huge things that scouts are looking for, and at the younger ages, it's definitely a time to apply that and to really grow that, whether that be in practice or in your games. So anyways, awesome, great stuff from Marty. Really appreciate Marty if you're listening now, and whoever else is listening, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being here today. Thanks for starting 2023 off at the Up My Hockey podcast on an awesome note. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.